Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, September 12th Selectmen's meeting. Tonight we have with us Kelly Bigos, our recording secretary, our town manager, Tom Wooden, and Selectmen Wendy Wolf, myself, Denise Griffin, Mike Tomko, and Russ Hoffman. So we'll move on to town manager reports.
Thank
Tom.
you. Just a couple of quick things here. Last week, the new phone system went in. All the old phone handsets were replaced, and other than the fact that it took an extra day to do it, the system seems to be working very well. So those are up and running and fairly easy to use. Hopefully there wasn't much of an interruption to people calling in. If there was, we apologize for that. There's also been an ad in the paper for roughly the last month. We started it August 24th. It comes down this week for a shellfish warden. Brent Barter is moving at some point and will no longer be the shellfish warden. So if anyone knows any candidates that might be interested in that job, please steer them my way. And just an FYI, this Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, there'll be a pre-application review for the basketball courts, pickleball courts at the school field. And just to give some people a little heads up if they're not aware, the project's going to reduce the number of parking spaces from 35 to 28, add a sidewalk, a flagpole, install a landscape berm and so forth along Route 27. After it goes before the planning board, the project then will be reviewed by the DEP under the site location and development law. And Lauren Stockwell is guiding us through the planning board presentation and the DEP approvals. What Lauren will be asking for on Wednesday night is the planning board to waive the review process by finding that the project is de minimis as per land use ordinances 170-62. The project will not change the nature or intensity of the use of the property. It will continue to provide recreational courts and parking, and the project includes installation of vegetation, which will also improve the aesthetics. So that's just an FYI.
Okay, so that's at the planning board meeting, which is held here in this room
At
at
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock on Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. That's all I have at the moment.
Okay, great. We will move to the next item on the agenda, which is selectmen reports. Do we have any, Russ, Wendy, have
Sure.
any selectmen's reports? Wendy said yes first.
Sure. The Joint Economic Development Committee convened on Tuesday. We'd had sort of a break in August. We have one resignation from the committee. Frank Fassett, who is a Boothbay Harbor representative, is no longer serving on the committee, so we'll have to talk about a replacement for Frank on the committee. We had a guest presentation from Bill Kalina. He came and talked about some of the new developments that are happening with Gardens Aglow in the intersection with the Boothbay Festival of Lights. That will be very exciting. I don't want to spill the garden's beans, so I won't say too much about that, but it was a really neat strategy to engage the residents and sort of bringing forth the winter lighting mood. We also had a report on the events that are going on with Green Tree Events. Those are the consultants working with us to publicize and coordinate the Boothbay Festival of Lights with Gardens Aglow. There are banners that are up.
We'll be going up shortly.
Okay.
They just arrived, I think, Friday.
Yep, some banners that'll be going up to invite tourists to come back to the town. They'll be out by the fire station, I think, exiting by Boothbay, and I don't know where the other locations.
There'll be another one in the downtown area. I'm thinking it's in the general location of where Slicks is. As we get closer to the event, there'll be a more temporary banner set up in the area of the hill coming up just past Hannaford Brothers, guiding people into the downtown.
And there's a great logo for the Boothbay Festival of Lights. Merchants who are participating will have a logo that they can display. There'll be cross-advertising. And Tom and Dan Breyer, who's the town manager in Boothbay, have been working hard to design the lighting that will go on at each town. Boothbay Harbor will be different than Boothbay, just to provide some variety, and local merchants have been offered the discounted price to purchase lights if they wish to decorate their business with the similar lighting that the gardens use. So it's very exciting developments. I think people are really excited that this will be a different season for the Gardens Aglow. And I think that's about all I have to report. Mike, unless you want to add anything else?
I think it's worth mentioning that Green Tree, which had a presentation that was given to the town, gosh, in late spring, is planning on doing another one in September.
Right.
So merchants, residents will be invited and made aware of that in the register and other places, so you can get up to speed on the plans for the fall and for the lighting and festival.
Great.
And, enthusiasm remains quite high. Tom really talked about a great plan for lighting up the town, the footbridge, and other areas, so it's an exciting opportunity. Thrilled about it.
So
Right.
that's
Good.
all I have to report.
Good, great. Ross?
I don't have anything in
That's fine.
particular from the ambulance board,
Okay,
so.
that's not a problem. Good, then we'll move on to financials. Julia?
You have your revenue and expense sheets before you. The total revenue year to date is $3,673,005. Total expenses year to date, $1,162,425.94. As you can see, tax is due on September 7th, so we're slightly ahead in collections in comparison to this time last year.
That's great.
And I do have a call into Frank Wheeler. He's been out on another audit, waiting to schedule the audit review as well. I will let you know as soon as that occurs. Does anyone have any questions on the revenue or expenses?
When do we start to get those great little
As soon as
charts?
the audit, I get the audit postings for June 30th.
Okay.
As soon as he gives me the final postings.
Great, okay, thank you.
Total bank balance is $4,433,502.52. And the accounts payable this evening is $1,494,886.67.
Okay, so accounts payable tonight must include a couple of big ticket items.
It's a rather large payable tonight.
The county
We haven't had a
tax.
selectmen's meeting in 4 or 5 weeks. Tonight, I have on here to pay the county tax bill.
Oh,
Right.
Which is $966,000. There's several other larger ticket items on there as well. Reference district, the ambulance service,
all right. Yeah, I see,
and the school.
220,000 for
and the
school.
refuse district, so, yeah. Okay, great. All right, wonderful, thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on to approve the minutes of the August 8th meeting, which was our last meetings. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Additions, deletions? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, and that's an approval. The next item on the agenda is licensee. So you should have before you a request for a liquor license, which you've actually seen before, for the Boothbay Lobster Wharf, but this is really due to an official name change. The chief has initialed it, and because it's a name change, they had to apply for the liquor license again, but it's actually one that we actually approved just a couple months ago. So can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion from the public? No? Seeing none, any discussion from selectmen? No, all in favor? Motion carries. Great. Next item is old business. We don't have anything under old business, so we'll move, I don't believe, unless somebody wants to add something? No? Okay, so we'll move on to new business. The first order of new business is to approve the annual updates to the general assistance ordinance, Appendix A through D. And what this does is to approve the income and benefit guidelines that are given to us by the state. So can I have a motion to approve?
Yes, I also,
Second.
Okay. So, is there anybody in the public that would like to discuss the proposed general assistant guidelines? No, seeing none, then I will end the public discussion and ask the selectmen if they have any comments.
So I looked at it, and there are a lot of numbers and values there, and maybe Julia, you're probably the best one to tell us what the overall impact is. What is the?
Annually, we adopt these general assistance models for
Right.
MMA, and I did a comparison to see how much it gone up from this time
Exactly,
last year.
that's what I was hoping.
And for the overall maximum for one person per household, it's gone up $6.
did you say 60 or 6?
Six.
6.
Which they go by the federal poverty level limit, per person, per county.
Yep,
And 36 cents for food allowance, so the changes are minimal.
okay,
$4 increase for a one-bedroom apartment, which would be $669. And other than that, the utility maximums do not go up, nor did the heating maximums. Which were normal increases for the next.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so selectmen, all in favor of approving the ordinance updates? Okay, motion carries. And we'll sign those a little bit later. Let's see. So the next order of business is to approve 3 purchase orders that the town manager has put together. So the first one is for the Green Tree events, which Wendy and Mike, I think, maybe mentioned earlier. So Tom, do you want to
Yeah,
talk about what this is for?
just the second installment that the harbor is responsible for. Boothbay is splitting the cost of this contract with us, so they'll probably be doing the same approval at their meeting Wednesday night. But this is the second payment for them as per the contract that we agreed upon.
Okay, great. So can I have a motion to approve the purchase order for Green Tree?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
We've already been through this several times before,
Yeah,
so it's
right.
kind of a formality.
Right.
All righty, and in fact, I think in a way, these are all formality. The second
Yeah.
item, I believe, is for the engineering costs, which we needed to incur in order to move forward with the tennis court design. Tennis court and
Basketball, pickleball.
basketball court
Yes.
redesign. So this was for $5,000 to SRJ Engineering.
That's correct.
So can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? And the last is for the actual purchase of the lights, which we've been talking about for many months, which is a purchase order so that we can purchase the lights from S4 Lighting for $11,638.25, which I will say is less than what we budgeted, so we're in good shape there.
Yeah, and just to give you a heads up, pretty much the only thing remaining expense-wise, which I don't know, is to do some wiring at the footbridge, installing extra electric outlets, and doing some improvements over at the library. Other than that, what we're doing at the town office already has electricity, and the improvements we're doing down at Whale Park, there's already electricity there. So that should not be that expensive. This purchase order here is for over 23,000 lights.
Wow.
Tom, will that, those improvements for the electric be something then that can be used beyond the Christmas season
Oh,
or
yeah.
holiday season?
Yeah, they'll be on separate meters for the town, so the town will be charged for that electricity. Yeah.
And you're going from both sides because, well, you can't run one all the way across
Right.
because of the movable part of the bridge.
Right, there's posts on each side of the swing bridge, and we'll start from there on each side. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so can I have a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
All right, any more discussion?
So one more question.
Yes, absolutely.
At 11.6,
Yep,
that's the total amount for the lights.
for the lights, for the controllers,
Yeah.
for the extension cords, all of the,
Okay.
everything that goes with it. Yeah, and it actually has some extras. I factored in some spare parts in case some things, burn out in the season.
Sure.
Also, I just found out the other day that the Botanical Gardens is going to be selling some lights. I don't know if they're the same as what we have here, but that may be an option too if we suddenly burn out of something and have to go quickly buy something. But yeah, that's everything except for the upcoming electrical costs.
Tom, could you remind me what the amount was originally budgeted?
Yeah, we have set aside $25,000.
Okay.
And what I'm going to suggest when we get to budget meetings in January is that we may want to put that remaining money in a reserve account for next year, so that it doesn't just roll into the general fund, and that way we'll be that much farther ahead.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds good. Any other questions? So all in favor of the purchase order? Okay, motion carries. So the next order of business is to accept the police cruiser bid and approve a purchase order for a new police cruiser. Would you like to tell us about this?
Yes, I can. We've received two bids back. One was from Wiscasset Ford, the other was from Quirk Auto. The specifications that went out to both of them are here. They're quite extensive. But the results of those two bids was Quirk Auto came in at $26,268.72, and Wiscasset Ford came in at $27,758. So Quirk Auto is roughly $1,100 less, and Chief Hosh and I would ask the board to approve that bid so that we could proceed with the purchase of the police cruiser.
So I look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
Any comments from the police
Or
chief?
any, Chief Hosh, do you have anything you want to add to the?
Nice looking car. No, I really don't have anything to add. It is, there's lots of writing there if you wish to peruse it. But it's really what we have sitting out there. Anybody who wants to tour it, can come up and take a look at it.
Nice.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
So I need a refresher on how we budget for that. We do,
Yep, we have some of our police vehicles and some of our public works vehicles in a regular rotation. And each year we set aside money in a reserve account so that we plan to either repurchase in 2 years or 4 years, depending what the cycle is. I don't have them memorized right off, but it's on our budget sheets.
yeah.
And so this is something that we budget for every year within police department and public works. So we have some money set aside already.
So last year we
Yep.
had 15,000 budgeted for, and then in this fiscal year we have 15. So
Right.
and then he will outfit it as well, within the 30,000,
Okay.
roughly around. there.
So how often do we replace a cruiser? Every 4?
Every 4 years. And that's been borne out over, we've tried
Sure.
different things, and when you extend it, we ended up having problems, and when we shortened it, we felt like we weren't getting enough use, so.
Right, right.
4 has been the middle
Okay.
road on mileage.
Good.
Great. So all in favor of the purchase order? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, so, Chief, you're up.
Let me show you how to use this thing.
Farmers here, I gotta use my best TV and radio voice today.
Oh, my gosh. Harshest critic.
You thrilled my granddaughter. One of them said, "That's a police chief, he is a doll."
And that's on TV, Bob.
That's gonna go to his head.
Thanks, Palmer.
I won't tell you what the other one said, but
Bob, as you go through this, all you need to do is just scroll using this
I can handle that, Greg. Thank you. Yep. So I brought an esteemed guest with me today. This is Annie Pat McKenney from the Coulomb. She's the program director at the Coulomb Center, and she's been really instrumental in helping me organize my thoughts, number one, but also has just really come along on the, this has been an adventure, and has come along with a lot of organization in helping us put parts and pieces together, because it says up here, Boothbay Harbor Police Department Addiction Outreach, and we may be doing some of the outreach, but we are about 1/50th of what's going on behind the scenes. Much of this, I'm sure, people here have not been living in a cave, and you look at the news and you see that opiate addiction and many other problems are, boy, at an all-time high. We are dealing with it every day, and I mean that every day. And we decided a few years ago to do something maybe a little bit novel, just in talking to folks. In other words, we were bringing people in when they would get in trouble or when we knew that they were having problems, to try and speak with them about those problems and just ask questions. And it was quite remarkable to me that pretty much everybody would speak to me about the problem. And so from there, of course, comes, all right, what do we do to help? And you can see that one of the big issues here is when individuals are seeking help in recovery. One more thing that struck me was most folks, when you speak to them, are willing to seek help. They realize that they have a problem, and it may not be today or tomorrow, but they will seek help at some point. So with that being said, we began, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, really calling around saying, what is there? What do we have? Anybody who's been through the process realizes that that in itself is a tough road. And we are, but we did, I met with some good folks and some people willing to help and willing to talk to me about the process when somebody wants to come off drugs, if you will, come off opiates, and how it's going to work. And I've continually referred back to these people over the years, and we've tried to develop a program so that people can feel safe coming to the police department and asking for help. So basically what does happen is we have, as you'll see here, we have support. This is, we have an initial contact. That contact can happen with someone wandering in and just asking for help, and that's beginning to happen more and more. Either people calling me or contacting me through a family member, I should say us. There are other officers, getting this to happen as well. And or we go out and we find somebody and we bring them in and ask them. When I say bring them in, we don't arrest them. We just ask them if they would be willing to come in and speak with us, and just about every time they will. We usually have a meeting and a discussion of issues, and this part here, the second part where it says paperwork, care partners, and our Lincoln County Recovery Collaborative, which is still being developed there, has actually been the biggest piece for me, and that is that we were beginning to offer, and I think I'll let Annie Pat talk a little bit here about care partners. But what this was is an opportunity for us. Most of these folks do not have health insurance or dental insurance and things, so we were able to offer them something. This was not just me saying, hey, you need to get clean. We were basically talking to them about health. We were talking to them about their family. We were talking to them about people around that could help support them, including the police and medical folks. And out of that, we did discover, I shouldn't say discover, it's been around for a while, but the Care Partners program, and we got them to send us the paperwork to apply. Now, Care Partners, I am going to, because I will butcher it, I'm going to have Annie Pat explain it a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, Annie Pat, how that came about and what they do.
So Jeff Slack is our Care Partners coordinator for the county for Lincoln Health, and it is a program that's been around for a while. I think it's going on 15 years, and what it is sort of a network of charity care that Lincoln Health, Maine Health folks agree to give back to the community. There is an application process. It goes through Jeff Slack, who's based at the Aerosmith building in Damascotta. But Care Partners is just one program that Jeff manages. He also helps people with unpaid medical bills, just full charity care. Care Partners has a slight copay, and also helps people apply for other Affordable Care Act health insurance. So he does a variety of things, but I think what Chief Hash has noticed is that by showing interest in these folks' health, and Chief Hosh and Jeff Slack do that really well when they meet with folks and really show that they care about them as a whole person and know that recovery is so much more than just staying off of drugs.
I told you she'd say it better than I could. So, and I want to mention that there are many folks that we talk to in and around this realm. There's the Addiction Resource Center, which is based out of Midcoast Hospital, and Eric Harum works out of there. He's been a very big partner for us, and you hear many times about folks going away to rehabs, if you will, I'll put the quotes up, or sober houses, and that is still available. There are times, but there are folks also that want to get sober staying in their town. They want to get sober staying here. And many times they have jobs and families and reasons to stay. So that's a big part of what ARC does. It's a big support. And I would also want to mention that we have some folks right over here. Dr. Alamo and his therapist, Lisa Carboni, have been a very big help. I did ask their permission to mention their names, but have been a very big help. And I have to mention also that I call many of these folks with questions about addiction, and they help me understand at times. So, over time, we've also now begun to get a network of not only medical professionals, but now I have a network of folks who have become sober, they're pursuing sobriety, and they're actively pursuing sobriety. And these folks are tremendous. I gotta say this, they're a tremendous asset. I think, we maybe have a way of thinking about folks that have these problems. I understand that, I'm a police officer, but when you see them, when they're not sober, and then you meet them 6 months later, there's a pretty tremendous difference. And many of these folks are very bright. Many of these folks got into this because of sports and or some other life issue where they were injured. I don't need to go into the history of opiate pain addiction and addiction to pills and whatever, but that's many times how it starts. And it is truly sad. I know some of these, I'd say kids, many of them are adults now, but they were kids. I knew them when they were growing up, and it's very hard to look at them when they're sitting there in pain. And I won't go terribly into it. It's very personal, but I just will say that I'm very proud of some of these folks that have come forward. This is a tremendous. If you know someone who's done this, I'm going to tell you, people in here probably run or done some hard things physically. This is an extremely brave thing to go through this, to go through the process of detoxification and whatever, and I have to commend people who do it. So months and years later I will call them and say, tell me about process A, because I'm working with somebody, and they help me. Now by that I mean people in recovery help me. And I have a network of these folks that I call and ask them questions about how I can reach out to somebody else. And in turn, when someone hears that a person is getting sober, many times they say, how did you do it? Or they know that they reached out to me and they come as well. So I want to get back to this here. Together with, we begin to identify a support system. I talked about that a little bit. What we'll usually do is say what's left. Sometimes these people have been pushed away by family, by friends. Many times we'll ask them, who did you have for friends in school? Who did you hang around with? What was your peer group? And it's amazing, most of them do not hang around with that same peer group. And as a matter of fact, I asked them about their hobbies, what hobbies they used to have, what hobbies they have now. Most are gone, most of the hobbies, that is. And so we try to cobble together a support group of family, medical professionals, police. I always say you can count on me as part of your support group if you'd like. And a lot of times we'll get them to sign releases so that I can communicate with people like their therapist about how they're doing. And I have to say, this is the part, in my opinion, of getting sober that is long-term, that makes it work. It isn't just somebody. There are folks, as you know, that this is I'm not an expert on it, but I can tell you that it is a process that many times people will fall, get back up, fall again, get back up. So we want to continue to work with them on that. Again, beginning connections to treatment, we usually initial detox, which is one of the toughest parts. We have folks that are really in a lot of pain when they come in here, physical and mental pain, and it's really, really hard to watch. And it's hard to, they many times have a hard time listening, so we are trying to get them an advocate. at this point, which so far it's been sort of me that's been their advocate, and we're trying to bring people in to help me with that. And by that I mean walk them through emergency room processes with doctors. Again, addiction treatment with the ARC and some of our local folks. Medical treatment's big, connection to a primary care doctor. Dental treatment, many folks have problems, and we talk with them all about putting together your health with your dental, and you know, this builds the foundation for sobriety. Sometimes they can listen to me right off, but sometimes they're not feeling very well. And mental health services. A lot of folks tell me, hey, I just need to talk to somebody. I've heard that more than I've heard pretty much anything else. So long-term, and then we're getting towards the end here, but long-term what we are looking at, if we can get a person to help, and the Cool Home Center again has been great in helping me plan and think. I'm just thinking what we can do. Anybody here heard about the fact we may have an employment problem in the summer around here? And other times we don't have folks. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I know some good folks that now that they're in recovery would be great employees. We've been able to hook a few people up with jobs. Like I said, I asked their permission to speak with their employer maybe at times, and usually they're okay with that. Again, I want someone to help me. This is the part where we start to get in, this gets very involved. Some people have long-term health problems. Again, that's something we're working on. Again, not just the initial detox and the getting sober, but a lot of times we'll determine that there are long-term health problems after that. So housing can be an issue. And again, stabilization. What I talk to these folks a lot of times about is life is doing this. And I always say we try and bring it here where it's, you know, maybe the waves are less. And so we definitely want to continue building support networks. We've even met with Andy Hamlet talking, and others at the Y, talking about exercise is important, building your body, feeling good about yourself, enabling, which is, you know, I don't know if, I'll probably butcher this again, but someone told me sometimes coming off of these things feels like your worst flu on top of your worst mental day, where you just don't feel good. And so we talk a lot about rebuilding that process in your mind, enabling yourself to feel good just naturally. And also, I should mention, it is at times done with medication. That there's a lot of studies on that, but since I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to go too far into that, but we are very cognizant of the fact that many of these folks do need medication after many years of some of these products. AA and NA, a tremendous resource in this area. AA just has a huge support group, and these folks, I do want to give them a little shout out there. More folks that I call a lot, I talk to, they guide me in how to deal with some of these problems, and they also will take people under the wing. I'm sure some of you have some experience with either AA itself and or a person who's in AA, but it really is a great long-term stabilization. It's a long-term, enables people to talk and meet with others that may have similar experiences. Now, again, and this is the end, I think.
That's the end. Yeah.
Public education, I think that when I say that, people always think we mean we're going to go up to the school and tell kids not to do drugs, which we will continue doing that. We have officers that, as you all know, go to the school. We have lots of outreach. The teachers up there do a very good job, and the administration up there do a very good job of talking about the stuff. They care deeply about it, and those are the things we will continue to do. But in this, I mean more sort of what I'm doing here today. We want to continue to reach out to the community to talk about these issues. This is not perfect. I wish it was, what's the show? Andy Taylor, Opie.
Leave it to Beaver.
Leave it to Beaver. I wish it was something like that, where at the end of the 30-minute episode we had, everything was solved and everybody was great. It is not that simple, but we have seen extraordinary things. I don't know what else to say about it. I've been a police officer 23 years. I've seen some folks do extraordinary things, more than any other time in my career that I remember. And I guess in a way what we're saying is we're trying to believe in people doing this and believe in them. And a lot of people will call me and say, thank you. And I say, you did this. I didn't suffer through it. I helped. But it's impressive when they do it. And I've learned a lot as a police officer. So we really want to reach out to the community about helping, about recognition of the issue, about how to come to us if they want us to help somebody. We're not perfect, I can't wave a wand, but we can provide some of these for someone who's open to them. And again, just teaching the public, the general public, about the issues. And how it's being addressed by local law enforcement. I do need to say, these things are against the law. Some of the behavior is against the law. This does not mean we give everybody a free pass and we wander around, we think everything's wonderful. That's not what happens. Many of these folks are very understanding about the fact that they have to face consequences over certain things. But if somebody comes to that police department and asks me for help, I always tell them I'm not going to get you in trouble for asking me for help and telling me that you did something illegal today, put something in your body that was illegal, something along that line. And if you want to turn in drugs, you always hear this, we allow them to turn in drugs, and people have turned in drugs to us. Now that is not as common as just reaching out for help, but it has happened. So, I hope that isn't just the headline also of it, but because that's not, but it does happen. So, one of the other things that we've been trying to do is reach out slowly to employers. Again, I've been very busy with the other side of this, but we want to reach out to employers again, to teach them how to ID addiction issues. Many times what an employer will do is if they think there's a problem or someone has one of these addictions, what's the instant thing that happens? They'll fire them. And sometimes with cause. But we want them to have another tool. They can call us and say, this person really needs help.
Or they're not sure what to do, and they're not able to intervene perhaps when the time is right. They may have a missed opportunity, and so both things we want to address.
And again, I did mention this earlier, but discussing maybe some training with local employers so that they might be willing to hire employees in recovery. And I've already had some employers tell me they would be willing under the right circumstances. And again, we've had some folks that I feel are the right circumstances. They're long enough out there. And many times these folks, as soon as they get a little better, they'll say, I want to have a job, just like any of us. I want to feel good about who I am and what I'm doing. And just like I think anybody would. So I did want to welcome questions through that. I didn't mean to, I hate just talking the whole time, but I do welcome questions. And if anybody has questions, feel free. That's pretty much the 3 is the end there. I tried to shorten that quite a bit. And Annie, Pat, if you had anything you wanted to jump in on.
No, I just would like to echo what an asset you have here in Chief Hosh, and the fact that he's doing a lot of this really proactively, reaching out to folks in the community. And like he said, he's not joking when he says he calls people and asks a lot of questions. He definitely does that. He asks when he doesn't know, he asks when he thinks he has a good idea that maybe should be tried. So I think that's a really big asset that you have here, and a big piece of the puzzle to beginning to move the needle on this issue.
And Pat has taken a lot of these nights away from family to be at these meetings with me, so I appreciate that very much. Yes, ma'am?
Well, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. Can you suggest for us what we might be able to do as the board and the town manager to help both support you and the other police officers, and also this effort with the Lincoln County Recovery Collaborative? Is there anything that you envision would fall into our purview? And I will say the invitation tonight was another way to do some public education, since it's taped. I think people read about this in the paper, but you have to hear these things many times to understand what's happening in the community, and your leadership on this is really important to publicize. So I appreciate the presentation tonight. So
thank you. This is a good point about the Lincoln County Recovery Collaborative too, and I wanted to mention them. Senator Johnson, Chris Johnson, you folks may know, started up when I bothered him a little and he was already on this topic, and we put a lot of people together. The sheriff's been great. We did meet, a lot of the law enforcement agencies met, and we decided we wanted to take something like this countywide, and that is what has been done, and that is still forming in and of itself. But there's been a lot of questions, a lot of people calling here, other law enforcement agencies calling here, and we're also, I should mention, anybody heard of Operation Hope down in Scarborough? I mentioned it earlier, but we call them with questions. There's a great collaborative effort going on, and one of the things that's going to occur here that my answer to you about what people can do, I don't know yet, because what we are working on currently is a person, we are working on possibly some private funding to get a person to come help with what we are doing. I have folks helping me, but we've cobbled a lot of people who have a lot of jobs that aren't necessarily exactly this, and I'm getting them to help, which they've been wonderful. There's a bunch of them. Our community navigator has been wonderful, and as I mentioned, the folks over in the at St. Andrews at Lincoln Health, and Annie Pat. But we want to have a person that really focuses on it. So we're trying to raise some private funding. That would not be a municipal position. We've been talking to Sue Burge about the Boothbay Region Community Resources and Council, and we actually think that that might be a good place to put a person to come help. And she is definitely on board with that. But again, what we're looking to do is raise some funds. And there are some groups talking to us. I've done this sort of version or two of this speech in a few places now. And let me say this, everywhere I've gone, a whole bunch of people really want to help with this. I mean, it's a powerless feeling. None of us like things that we can't do anything about, that we feel powerless about. And this is something where people feel like there might be something I could do here. So I want to say thank you. There's got to be 150, 200 people have come up to me just out of the blue. You know, I've heard about some of the things you're doing, like to help. So we're going to do that if we can get beyond the point where we're just dealing with all this initial stuff. We want to do more outreach, more public outreach, and more, like I said, more with the employers. And I think that that's the way the public can help. As far as the board, we're glad that you all know that we're doing it. I guess that's how I feel about that. And the town manager's been very supportive. I've spoken with him numerous times about it, so appreciate that.
Behind closed doors with you crying.
He's right. Yeah. So it's such a rough ball of clay still. I've used this analogy for quite a while now. It's starting to form much better.
Well, and I think by putting, some of this down on paper is sort of the first step. A lot of this before had really been in Chief Hosh's head, and, just his trial and error over some time. And by getting this on paper and by reaching out to community resources like Boothbay Region Community Resource Council, pairing it, somehow with the Community Navigator program, which already exists and is already running and doing a lot of this work, how can we take some of the treading water situation out of it so that we can be even more proactive than we are. And I think that's happening now in support of the town, both at the government level and the community level is really important in that.
She's being very nice saying that. I went over there and I scribbled a bunch of stuff up on paper that I couldn't even read. And Annie Pat wrote these things down as I did that. So that's how we organized it right there. But I would agree. And I also want to mention the churches around. I mean, this is what makes a community very good. And what might make something like this succeed where it might not succeed elsewhere is the fact that we're relatively small. You take this peninsula, the multiple towns, but we have Reverend Folger's been wonderful. I'm going to give her a shout out there because she listens to me, not just on this topic, but many. And Reverend Hecker, we've had many folks talking to us about this and helping with people who are in rough spots. Sometimes when someone comes in, they have no place to go, they have no clothes, they have no food, no driver's license, no car. And I'm not kidding when I say that there's just nothing, and I have to have a place to go. So that's very much appreciated. And I go to other towns, and I probably shouldn't say this on TV, but I go to other towns sometimes and I listen to the problems and I think, boy, am I lucky. I mean, I have 911 here. I have like 20 911s that I can call and people respond. I go and I listen to other folks talk when I go to meetings around the state, and I think we're very lucky. Many people are willing to step up.
Great, thank you.
Chief, you and I have talked at length about this, and first off, I think you're to be commended for the amount of time and effort that you are putting into it. Can you maybe repeat some of the things that you've shared with me about the actual prevalence of the opioid issue here on the peninsula, and just maybe talk just a little bit about the percentage of your day, of your weeks that is spent on this. It really helped to drive home the point to me that this is something that does deserve our attention.
Yeah. I think if I didn't do this for a living and I was in my job somewhere, I don't know that I would understand the scope of it. So let me say that first for folks that may or may not. But many people, when you talk to them, start to say, you know, come to think of it, my relative has this
Right.
problem, or my friend's daughter, or my friend's son, or my nephew. It really, when you start to think of it in those terms, ARC actually had some pretty shocking, and I can't repeat all the numbers because I can't remember them all, but the numbers of folks they're treating, the numbers of young ladies coming in that have opiate problems or pregnant are astounding. And I don't know another word for this, and you don't have to look far to see that there's been a lot of tragedy, a lot of folks, very young, very promising folks that have passed, and in our community as well. And it's, without getting personal about it, it's very prevalent. I say to folks, you go by it every day and you don't know. And you deal with it every day without knowing. And that's the way I feel about it. Now, I do feel like, can we arrest folks who do things? And I hear lots of times, well, arrest the dealers, and law enforcement does, it's what law enforcement does. But we need a reason that less dealers want to come here. We need more folks getting well, more folks understanding they don't want to get into it. That's how I think we'll get there. It's going to be a long road. You know, I guess I could reel off statistics, but I don't want to bore anybody. But there are, I mean, the numbers of folks who are between, I think it's like 18 and 35 are fairly astounding.
Yeah.
That have had issues with it. And to include even the number of, you know, heroin itself, if we think of the stigma that went with heroin even 15, 20 years ago, you know, how often we dealt with people who injected heroin or something was nothing like now. I mean, it would have been an unusual event for us to deal with it. We dealt with it once in a while. It's pretty regular for us now. And officers all aware, almost all of us are testing things all the time, and testing needles, and people have drug resistant, you know, the needle resistant gloves, and it's very, very much on our minds.
Chief, are our first responders adequately supplied with the drug that brings you back from an overdose?
And that was a question. Narcan, everybody's heard of Narcan? Yes, and without going into detail, they have used it, and they are great. I need to make sure I thank they respond so quickly here, and I'm very thankful for our local ambulance. We have the opportunity for our officers to carry it, but I got looking at our calls. We have had officers show up to overdoses first, but usually that ambulance is there, boom. So right now, we're still looking at it. Some rural departments I know are carrying it, ones that might get there long before an ambulance. But it's always on my mind whether we should, and I will always reassess that.
And I have another question. Are we seeing here in the peninsula carfentanil and fentanyl?
Yes. We've tested this stuff, it comes back. I can't even tell you, and I'm trying to get the word out to many folks. This stuff is coming back with
mishmash of stuff.
everything in it. And it's mixed and cut. yes, fentanyl is here, and it is in every bit of heroin now we're testing, so.
And that's leading to many more of the fatalities across the state.
Yes, fentanyl is much quicker acting, much more powerful, goes away quicker, but it's, yes.
Chief, how much of what you're seeing is illegal drugs versus prescription drugs that are being misused?
A few years ago, much more the prescription drugs that were being used. But there's been a sort of a shift over time. Number one, they're very expensive. And number two, the availability of heroin has I was just reading a statistic about Afghanistan and these other places that have the poppy fields and how much they've increased their yield, I guess you'll say, on opium every year, which is, of course, the base of all these things. And pills now, we still see them. We see Dilaudid, we see Percocets, and all those things that are being used illegally. But heroin has certainly taken over, whereas years ago it was pills. 5, 6 years ago it was definitely the pills, and now it's changed.
Yeah, Chief, I just wanted to point out that this is just not an issue for young people, that actually not heroin, but opioid addiction is a growing problem in the elderly. People don't realize how potent opioids are, and a lot of elderly get OxyContin and things like that for pain relief or arthritis or whatever. They can become addicted over time. They don't really even realize it. Other thing to realize is that when you are taking opioids, what happens is if you take it chronically, it really changes your brain chemistry, and that people who are suffering from addiction, they really are not seeking drugs to necessarily get high. They're seeking drugs to basically feel normal, because their brain chemistry has been changed by the exposure to the drug, so that when the drug effect starts to wane, like you said, they feel like they're in the, worst day of their flu, in the most depressed day of their flu, and the drug doesn't make them necessarily feel high, it makes them feel normal. And it takes a while for that brain chemistry to really realign once someone comes into recovery. So there are some common misperceptions about addiction that we should all learn about. I think it's important to eliminate the stigma that we have towards people who are addicts. There are actually lots of addictions in our society, and opioids and heroin are just one of them. So
I agree. The key to that, it physically changes people. It physically changes their brains, and it takes a lot of time to recover that.
Yeah.
And that is a great point. Great point.
Yeah, again, saying, you can't arrest your way out of a
Yes.
brain chemistry change.
If we arrest I tell people this, a lot of folks talk to me, and I encourage people on the street to come talk to me about it. If we simply arrest somebody and put them in jail, they're there not even a day usually. They're back out, they're just as addicted as they were. Now, sometimes arrest is the answer because we can do bail conditions, but we usually now, when we realize there's a problem with addiction, we try to set them up with all these same things. Because what good is it if I'm just saying, I guess I can't even, I've talked to so many of these folks about what a tremendous overriding need it is to do this stuff once you're on it. Me just saying, well, you'll get in trouble again, you'll go to, is not going to cut it.
yeah.
So I thank you all for.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much
Thank
for
you.
all your work on this. It's a tremendous community and public health problem for me.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move on, and Tom Churchill is here to discuss the planning board's position on a couple of items, I believe.
Yes, thank you. I really wanted to come tonight just to introduce myself. I haven't met all of the board members. I'm new as chairman of the planning board, so for me this is a new position. And 8 steps to follow after Mike did such a great job for many years. But there were two issues that came up at our recent meeting that I believe the selectmen were interested in. That was the Chapter 1000 from DEP regarding shoreline zoning. And we've discussed this at a number of meetings going back several months, trying to figure out how that would affect our town if we were to adopt the new Chapter 1000, and without going through the details of the four different issues. What it comes down to is that there are parts of it that are very attractive. There are parts of it that probably not so much as it relates to what people can do with existing properties and how those would be affected if we adopted the Chapter 1000 version. We thought it would be best if we could pick and choose, take some of the new ordinance from the state and incorporate it with some of our existing ordinance. Turns out we can't do that. It's an all or nothing proposition. Either we adapt the state ordinance as written or we keep what we have. And so we decided that's where we would stay. We had looked at what other towns in Lincoln County did. I think there were 16 or 17 towns. Only one so far has adopted the state guideline, or the state recommendations for shoreline zoning. So our thought is, we don't want to spend any more time on this. We think it's in the interest of the town to stay where we're at for the moment and see what happens. Our gut feeling, based on what we've heard from the state, is that probably within a number of years, 2, 3, 5 years maybe, the state will probably see how this plan, this ordinance has worked out, make some changes to it, and then sort of direct all the towns, saying that they must adapt the guidelines. So for the moment, our recommendation is to just sit tight and leave it at that.
Thank you.
We did a follow-up survey. Jeff rode around the harbor, identified buildings as those that would be affected, those within 75 feet, those within 25 feet, those beyond 75 feet. So we have a pretty good idea, and there weren't that many that would be affected by it. So we kind of said that's the end of our discussion on that topic. The second was regarding lawn, garage, and yard sales. And we kind of know where that came from. We looked at the ordinance. There really is nothing in the ordinance that addresses this in any fashion. And we talked to Jeff and said if we write some sort of an ordinance, a recommendation saying there's a time limit on these, limit on signs, or however it's handled, it becomes quite an enforcement issue to keep track of these. Jeff clearly said he really didn't want to go down that road. He would do it if he had to, but it doesn't seem like it's an endemic problem that needs immediate attention at this point. Obviously, with one exception maybe, but so we just kind of said we're not going to get into that issue right now. We think we've looked at it, probably not a lot to be gained by changing it or trying to come up with a new ordinance at this time. So those are the two issues. If we certainly are always looking to the selectmen to give us some guidance, suggestions, or whatever about things we should look at. One of the things we are doing is looking at the comprehensive plan, which every planning board member now has a copy of. We've gone through that. There are certain sections in that plan that specifically say the planning board shall do this or should do that. We've identified all of those, and at our meeting on Wednesday, we're going to start refining that list and focusing on maybe one or two of the items that we think are most critical to the town in terms of trying to implement that comprehensive plan, that section of the comprehensive plan. And what we'll do is discuss it, come up with some ideas, and then of course pass those on to the selectmen, either in the form of an ordinance or comments or something that you can review. So I'm glad to be here, always looking forward to talking with the selectmen. I'll be happy to be here at any meeting and certainly invite you to come to ours, because you obviously don't have enough time to fill up the day.
Okay. Do any of you have any questions for Tom on either of those two topics?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to just explore number 2, obviously, the garage and yard sale. since I agree with you that the complaint is generated by one specific situation, but it seems to be a annually recurrent specific situation that happens every year, and it is in a highly visible location in the downtown business district. And it has generated concerns by shop owners and others. I certainly don't want to put ordinances on the book for minor things that then would impact many others. Are there any sort of examples that you all have found from other towns that differentiate things that may be in a downtown business district? I'm just curious, because that does impact tourism. It's where people are congregating. It's the sort of public presentation of the town to the outsider. So I just wonder if there's any sort of special dispensation that other towns have had for their downtown business district.
We have not looked into the ordinances of other towns and how they address this. Where this issue is, seems to be most obvious, of course, is in the business area.
Right.
And it would be hard, we found it hard to differentiate what is happening at one side from what is happening across the street, let's say, or any other business that displays items for sale on the sidewalk. So if we try and restrict that, especially in the business district, it may have a negative impact on many businesses.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people put displays out or whatever outside their storefront, they would have to adhere to the same sort of ordinance.
That's
then.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Addressing it more in the residential areas doesn't seem to be that much of an issue. People have a yard sale for a day or two, and then it's gone. And it was addressing it in the business area, and how do you tell one location you can't display things when they're in a business location, and yet tell other businesses they're allowed to. That seemed like a very slippery slope that we didn't quite want to go down yet.
Okay. No, I can appreciate that, so.
Okay. Yes.
Mr. Churchill, to follow up, would the
Yeah, could you tell us your name and your address?
Yes, I'm here at Blakesley, 226 Lakeside Drive.
Thank you.
Yes. Would the fact that an entity has or doesn't have a business license make a difference in differentiating what the entity on one side of the street can do and the entity on the other side can't do?
I guess that's a possibility, but having a business license is something that we haven't looked into to see how that might have impacted. It's a good question. Maybe we can review that.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I've got.
Other questions? Mike?
Sure. Tom, thanks for the good summary. In talking about number one, the DEP 1000, I know that there were four major sections. There was one talking about forestry and whether to have the code enforcement officer do the forestry analysis shared between them and the state, or just the state. And I know that the board, and I think Jeff had said that it seemed appropriate to have the state be the individual to manage that process and to be the resource. Is there any plans to go forward with that section or change under DEP 1000?
Well, no, because it's a kind of an all or nothing, and when we looked at that section of it, that was kind of the easiest of the four to deal with, because we have very little forest land within the town that is subject, within the shoreline zone, would be affected by that. And Jeff has no real experience as a forest manager. So he said since it's such a small amount of the area in the town, it would be easiest and probably prudent to just let the state deal with that if it becomes an issue at some point or in some specific location.
Okay, great. The other thing I would say, and that maybe be cognizant of what other towns may or may not be doing in terms of garage and yard sales and estate sales, and from my work with the Regional Planning Commission in Lincoln County, I'll continue to query and ask and see what other towns are and be able to feed you guys information that I discover.
Terrific. That would be very helpful, thank you.
Great.
Two, I have a couple things on the shoreland zoning question. First, why do you think only one other town has adopted the state proposal? And second, when the planning board was considering this, did you all look at it from a perspective of what kind of growth would be facilitated by one or the other, and think about it in those terms?
In answer to your first part of your question, I don't know which town did that. That information came to us from the state when we asked the question, but they didn't tell us which town it was. But since the overwhelming number of the towns elected not to, I can't say whether that town has any similarities to Boothbay Harbor or whether it's more rural in nature or more urbanized than we are. But so far, only one of the 15 or 16 towns has done that. The second part of your question, most of the changes in the ordinance that relate to Chapter 1000 affect existing properties. If it's new construction, it's pretty clear it's beyond 75 feet. That's not an issue. It's those properties that have existing structures, either less than 25 feet or between 25 and 75, or some part of the building that encroaches into either the 25 or the 75-foot range. So it affects only existing buildings for the most part. So how that would affect future development, probably not a great deal, because anything new, like even the building at Lincoln Bay that went up, they just moved it back 75 feet and all the issues went away. Trying to work within the ordinance, because the existing structure was in that 75-foot zone, just got very complicated and restrictive. Does that help?
Yep, thank you.
So can I follow up? What would be the downsides of adopting Chapter 1000 other than that it's change?
Well, it gets fairly complicated and lengthy, but it has mostly to do with how much you can expand, whether it's, right now our ordinance allows expansion by either 30% of volume, which is kind of hard to figure out sometimes,
Yes, I'm sure.
the volume of a building, or floor area, and the state kind of does away with the volume requirement. So without getting into the minutia of that, which took us a long time to understand, and I don't know if I could even explain it adequately this evening, but it has to do with how much an existing building can be expanded. And in some cases, you have to look at it and say, why is that building being expanded, and how would that affect the shoreline, either visually or functionally?
Right.
And in some cases, it would really help a homeowner or a business by using the existing ordinances. In other cases, and one we're particularly aware of, it would hinder them using the existing ordinance, the new state code, Chapter 1000, would allow them to do things they can't do now. So you have to look at it, it's not a clear benefit or hindrance. It depends almost on a case-by-case basis on
Right.
what's there and what they want to do.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions on this topic for Tom? Thanks for coming and sharing that information. We
Yes, thanks very
appreciate it.
much.
So,
I'll stay for a few minutes, this is so much fun.
yeah.
May I ask a
Yeah.
question at the discretion of the board? Would you be interested in hearing, a regular, whether it's every other month or quarterly, from Tom and the planning board? He's mentioned that they're planning on going through the comp plan and looking at all the sections that say the planning board will or ought to. I for one, would like to have a regular dialogue and hear what they're doing. That's just my personal bend.
Well, I think it's a good idea. Let's check in after you've had a think maybe a little bit more discussion on comp plans and have gotten to a point where you maybe have some more, better understanding or some information and more, meaty substance to share with us.
Okay. When we perhaps identify one or two sections of that plan that we want to focus on, I can come back and say, this is what we want to do, this is the direction we want to go, and you can give us some guidance there and say, but you're nuts, you can't do that, this is more important, or say, tally ho, carry on.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I'll let you know
Okay.
when we get to that point, I'll come back.
Okay. Plus, it's kind of a long process because if we really think about making changes, we need to kind of work backwards from the town meeting and having
Public
hearings and ordinances drafted way ahead of time and publicized. So, we may actually be talking about doing work over the next 6 to 9 months, really for the following year, not spring of 2017. May more likely be spring of 2018 or other, some special meeting that we hold.
Yeah, it's a long process.
Yeah, it's a long process, I guess. Sometimes I feel like I need to remind people of that. So, good. Okay, thanks. Thanks. So we'll just be in touch then.
Okay.
Great.
Feel free to email me at any time with or any
Okay,
members of the planning board.
absolutely.
Great.
Okay, so I think that wraps up our new business. Next, we move into public forum. Are there any people here that have any public forum topics? Yes, ma'am,
Well, I'm
please.
not sure what is the definition of public forum? Is that just?
Yes,
it's a-
anybody who's joined us tonight sitting in the public audience who would like to raise an issue. And if you'd like to state your name and your address.
Yes, it's Janet Martin, and the address is 7 Atlantic Avenue. And within the last 2 weeks, a group of 6 neighbors, all from Boothbay Harbor, got together for dinner. And unsurprisingly, one of the topics that came up was the Route 27 Common Plan that's under consideration and presently scheduled for the referendum in Boothbay. And it was a lively discussion that centered around the proposal that was in the Boothbay Register recently from another Boothbay Harbor resident, Gelman?
Frank Hellman.
Frank Hellman, yeah.
And the discussion centered around how his proposed plan appeared to be superior to the plan that is presently scheduled for the referendum. And then the discussion proceeded to say, how can something that is going to impact Southport, Boothbay Harbor, and Boothbay only going to be decided by a referendum by Boothbay? Why isn't it being handled similarly to the way we handle public education, where the 3 entities kind of get together and figure out something that's going to work for everyone? So anyway, we just basically want to ask our selectmen, is there any way that the Boothbay Harbor representation of opinion can be made into the project?
Want my feedback on that from working with Dan?
I'll look to you, Tom, yeah.
I mean, I understand what you're asking. I think those of us down in the harbor would like to have a say in it, because obviously it does impact us. But from a voting standpoint, if we were to even have had it on a referendum, and it's too late to do it now because that had to be done last week to get on absentee ballots and so forth. But even if we had been able to put it on a referendum question, it would have been non-binding, because our voting here doesn't pertain to Boothbay. We also don't have any agreement between the towns on sharing any type of responsibility for what happens within their town. Something like the school CSD that you're talking about, there's an agreement between Boothbay and Boothbay Harbor for the community school district. The 4 towns here, they work independently. And as much as people would like to say, I'd like to weigh in on it and vote on it, it really does boil down to the town that it takes place in.
Is there any participation shy of a vote that we can think of to bring our issue or our opinion to the table?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we've chatted already, and I've indicated that the Boothbay Selectmen have really, I think, bent over backwards trying to have public input, and public input is invited from anyone who attends the meetings. Now, they have preference for Boothbay voters to really provide their comments, suggestions, et cetera, but I've attended the majority of the meetings. I think Mike's been there,
Been to a
Tom's
couple,
been to a
yeah.
couple, and I've spoken at some of them. So I think Harbor residents, Southport residents, I know many of them have attended the meetings, are very welcome to get up and provide suggestions, comments, have input into the process, because I think the town of Boothbay and the selectmen, they really want people to be thinking about this, and some of the suggestions that have come out of those public meetings have actually altered some of the plans already or led to modifications. The expansion now where the gas station is going away, the widening of that area. So I think the public input has actually been very good at trying to push and improve and do things. As I said, there's not an opportunity for us to vote on that issue because the funding is really coming from the Maine Department of Transportation in a special arrangement that's designed by the state to be money provided by the municipality, private investment, and MDOT. Boothbay residents are paying for their portion with their TIF district dollars. It's not impacting their taxes, whereas here in Boothbay Harbor, we don't have a TIF district or anything similar that we would be a contributing partner to. But I think Boothbay Harbor residents are welcome to attend those meetings, and there will be some additional times for public comment. And you can attend the Boothbay Selectmen meetings anytime. All of the select meetings are open for public forum, and I think the Boothbay Selectmen actually have 2 periods of public forum, both in the beginning and the end of the meeting. So I would invite people.
I would agree with what you're saying there too, is that the Boothbay Selectmen have moved their meetings to the YMCA to let the whole community join in, which I think was a great opportunity to open it up for everyone's public opinion. I haven't seen anyone told that they can't speak.
Yes, yeah.
I think everyone's been able to at least go up and voice their concerns.
Yeah.
But it's a one-on-one situation as opposed to our town having a position.
Right. I think we didn't feel that our town having a position on it would really make a difference or not. As Tom said, it would be non-binding. And quite honestly, I think that there are plenty of people in town who think that a different solution than the existing situation would be in order or is in order. So, yes.
For what it's worth, I had a discussion with Dan Breyer a couple of weeks.
Can you first tell us who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Greg Lauderer. I live 21 Fullerton Street in Hanover.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
I had a discussion with Dan Breyer a couple of weeks ago partly about this subject. And it was his opinion that he would very much welcome, he said this is a 3-way business deal, Wendy, as you mentioned, between the state, the town, and the private developer. He said there's nothing keeping it from being a 4-way or a 5-way if other towns wanted to participate. He said he would welcome any other towns that wanted to get in. Of course, that would involve them sharing in the expense of this. And of course, he was...
A wise town manager suggesting that other towns could bear the burden of the cost.
Well,
Yeah.
Of course. And he said, if there was enough interest in those towns, maybe something like that could happen. And it was his opinion, of course, he couldn't speak for the state, but it was his opinion that it would be a big feather in the state's cap to say that for this small amount of money that their portion that they're putting in this, that they were able to service 3 or 4 communities versus 1.
So, again, I mean, the immediate feedback we're getting here is that, oh, yes, we have, we can talk all we want at these meetings, but I would like the selectmen to consider what it would take to get involved in this as a business partner. Now, obviously, it may be too late for this particular vote that's coming up in November. I can certainly appreciate and understand that. However, like Janet had mentioned at the beginning, this Frank Hellman plan, which I've come across, I think it's an incredibly superior plan to the one that's being voted on. And so if this one gets voted down in November, there's a lot of likelihoods that could happen. The state could just decide we don't want to get involved with this anymore and walk away, in which case probably nothing will ever get done. However, there's a possibility that the Frank Hellman plan, if you want to call it that, could then surface where it's not at the 11th hour anymore, and we've got time to work on it. And at that point in time, this is something that impacts everybody. I think everybody would like to have a vote on it, and the only way we do that is to get involved as business partners. So.
I just want to bring up something. I speak with Dan pretty much every day, and if I remember correctly, on Tuesday of, what was it, last week when we had the Joint Economic Development Committee meeting, Dan brought up that he had actually, at the last minute when the Hellman plan was presented, submitted it to the DOT for their consideration. And if I'm not mistaken, it was rejected. I didn't ask what reasons, but if I remember correctly, that's what he said.
I have not heard that. He assured me that as soon as he heard back from the engineers, that I would be notified.
I think he's heard back.
I've not heard anything.
Yeah, just logistically, I think one of the issues, if the roundabout doesn't pass, and that's in the will of the Boothbay voters, it's my understanding from attending all the meetings from the Maine Department of Transportation that MDOT doesn't necessarily walk away from the traffic issue at the Common. It's just that our priority of addressing our traffic issue goes in the queue way down to the bottom, and then there is no other financing partner that helps raise that in the queue. One reason this has come to the fore is because it's satisfying this unique sort of funding structure that MDOT can operate under, where they have matching funds to then prioritize this to move ahead, so that if the roundabout is defeated, I'm sure people will still be talking about what do we do around the Common, but it may be years then before we have an opportunity to, raise up in the priority level, unless there's another private investor or the town stepping forward saying, we're willing to put money into this. But that doesn't necessarily mean that MDOT will come forward with $1 million to fund an alternative plan. That may be years in the offing. And that was really from the MDOT folks sort of explaining, because people ask, why is this why is this happening now when there are all these things? And they explained it was because of this very unique matching priority area, and that, yes, the Common's been on the list for a long time. So I think if it fails, we're kind of back to ground zero on all sorts of levels in terms of...
Unless the private developer who initiated a lot of this anyhow steps back in and says, okay, that failed, let's look at this other.
Right, well, that's up to the private developer,
Right.
so. But anyway, I'll just say, we've had selectmen meetings throughout the summer, and I've attended the Boothbay selectmen meetings. Your request is an interesting one. It's the first time as a select person, I think, at our meetings, we've had any formal request from the public to sort of be involved as a partner. So this is the first time that has kind of surfaced as trying to see if there's will within the town to be involved. So it is a relatively recent development for a process that's really been going on since, when did we start this? In March, I think, with the presentation of the first plan. So anyway, I mean, that's just my observation. I'm happy to have others respond.
I wonder if this presents itself as an opportunity for us to consider something like we did with the JEDC. We have Boothbay Harbor working jointly on economic development issues. Is there an opportunity for both boards, to Boothbay and Boothbay Harbor, to have a liaison? Irrespective of the dollar amount, a person from Boothbay Harbor that, Tom, Wendy, we've gone to those meetings, but that's been less in an official capacity, I think, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to ask Boothbay, would they like to have some type of liaison from Boothbay Harbor on a regular or irregular basis, just to touch base? We've opened communications, done great things with the JEDC. Is there another opportunity here?
Well, I just have to say that I think that this year we have had more communication between the two towns than we ever have had in the past decade that I've sat on this board, or since Tom has been town manager. Would you agree with me?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I have to honestly say, I can't see at this late point in time in the process what value it would bring. And I'm really sorry, but I don't agree that this is something that we want to wade into from a financial perspective. I don't agree that that's something that our town should consider or get involved in.
Well, that would be up to the townspeople, wouldn't it not, some sort of a town meeting?
So how would we do that? We would have to put something into the budget
Right,
Yes,
and
we
have a warrant
to
article.
address.
Well, keep in mind, one of two things are going to happen the beginning of November. It's either going to pass. and
Exactly.
That's the plan that they're doing.
Yeah.
Or it's not going to pass, and it's going to drop in the queue, like Wendy's talking about, and not happen for years. So I'm not sure what our opportunity is here.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I had a couple thoughts. It would be very interesting to understand what the DOT thought about Frank's plan and why they rejected it. I think, and if Dan has that information, I guess, Tom, we could ask you to
Sure.
get in touch and see if you can get some more detail. Because I agree, it did look like a pretty reasonable plan. And then the second thing, it's reasonable for them to expect us to participate financially in this as well. And our process and the DOT process for dealing with it is such that it's kind of hard to predict when it would come up again and how we would ask the people of the town of Boothbay Harbor to help pay for it. So I don't see a way forward with that. Until we know what happens in November, I suppose, then there might be some indication of when it would come up again, but.
Right, then if it doesn't pass, the whole equation is open.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, I don't know what the DOT thought of Frank Hellman's plan, but we have our planning board chairman here, and you can probably be more articulate about this than I can, but it's my understanding that one thing that many, many people overlook is just the the width that our town roads have to be according to our code or according to the town road right-of-way. I think roads really are supposed to be like 35 feet wide. They frequently aren't, and people kind of don't understand that, number one. It's also my understanding that the center of the road is not necessarily the center of the tar from one side to the other. And that there are other frequently rights-of-way issues that you get into when you're
Sure.
dealing with
Yeah.
designs. So I suspect that's kind of an issue up there by where the cemetery is and that monument and other structures.
And that's a state highway also, which has
Yes.
its own set of regulations.
Right.
That goes beyond what the town ordinance
Right.
Yeah, good point,
says.
good point. Probably bigger than 35 feet.
Yeah, for most state highways it is.
For that, it would be, yeah.
Yeah.
Based on the traffic volumes and speeds.
Yeah. So, anyway. Okay. Any other discussion on this topic? No? Okay. Any other public forum items? Palmer?
Yes,
Palmer, you're from Boothbay Harbor?
22 years, so I can remember.
Okay.
But I am an outsider. Primarily for us, I'm concerned about the ambulance service getting into a new business. Having serious financial difficulties with the old business, it looks like they're getting into the home health care business. Now, Lincoln Health has a very well-established home health care. I've dealt with both of them on several occasions. I don't know why the ambulance service, which cannot seem to get off the ground financially after all these decades, wants to go off into something else, hire more personnel, that now bought a vehicle, which is going to be used, it says here in the newspaper story, a number of purposes. For example, navigating through crowds. Why do you need to navigate through crowds to go and take somebody's temperature at home in the first place? And secondly, because you're on board of the ambulance service, why did you want to go off into another direction entirely at this point?
I'll have to get some more information for you on that. I think you're talking, as far as the vehicle goes, I think you're talking about what they're calling down there the fly car, the fifth vehicle.
The SUV that they bought.
Right, which was particularly so that they didn't have to put another ambulance on the road if one truck was out and needed
Oh, I
some
understand
additional
that.
support.
But-
So that was the primary reason for that.
But the home health services are handled by individuals with their own vehicles through Lincoln Health, which seems to have worked fine.
Yeah.
All of these services that they mention in here, you know, checking your blood, giving injections, and
Let me take that as an action item, Palmer, and get you some more information on
Actually,
that.
The
yeah, actually,
paramedic.
I think that's the community paramedicine program. It's a
Yeah.
pilot program that actually Palmer is being looked at for statewide as a way of helping to lower healthcare cost and try to use folks who are EMTs more efficiently so that they're doing things to help people with chronic illness in the community during their downtime, because they usually know who are the people who require check-ins, et
Hire
cetera.
other people to do what people who are highly trained and experienced in this to do, it looks to me. And it doesn't seem, anyway, but.
Let me find out.
One of the overall general question and the general malaise financially of the ambulance service, have you been able to learn why they simply don't charge for what it costs them to run the business?
As far as I know, we do charge, but we don't get paid for what it costs. I mean, there's the charge, and then there's what Medicare allows, and
There's your problem.
there's the difference.
Medicare, how many times has anybody ever written to Shelley Pingree, who is the only person for this geographic district, that has any ability to contact, I should say, the people that are totally responsible for the failure of Medicare overall, of which our ambulance service happens to be really a patient. If Shelley Pingree, and I use her name only because she is the only contact, the House of Representatives in Washington is responsible for Medicare.
Oh, no, no, no. The Medicare is a federal program, so our
The
Senate,
Congress of the United States is a federal program, and it's a federal agency which produces the money or does not produce the money to operate Medicare.
yes, but our senators are responsible for that also. So it's our congressional delegation that have influence over Medicare policy. So that includes our senators and our congressperson, so.
But the congressperson is the most direct one. I mean, I've gone through this with two predecessors in that seat. And it just seems to me that it's about time somebody did something, because Medicare was basically a financial failure from the beginning under Lyndon 50 years ago.
Right, well, that may well be, Palmer, but we started out the conversation about ambulance, and I know for sure that the Boothbay Harbor Board of Selectmen aren't going to be able to do anything about Medicare. So.
No, but individually as selectmen, apparently you could. I mean, I write,
Well.
and I don't get answers. But if a member of Congress or a senator or whatever gets 15 letters every Monday morning, not only from our ambulance service, but from the rest of them in the state of Maine, they might think that somebody really cares.
Well,
Okay, so you're
Point well
urging us
taken.
to write some letters and,
I really, because I don't think anybody has. I know it's disappointing. I've waited for answers.
well, we'll take that,
take
Under-
that duly noted.
yes, under
Because
advisement.
each year, we spend tens of thousands of dollars to keep this financially failing business going.
Well, I think, I will say, we've gotten a number of reports from them, and we actually, I think, feel that this year, the finances of Boothbay Region Ambulance are in much better shape than they have been other
They
years.
certainly
Yeah.
are,
So,
they definitely are in better shape.
yeah, you know.
One
So,
more financial question for all of you.
All
Last
right.
Thursday, you were supposed to be at a meeting to select the members of the County Budget Advisory Committee.
Yes,
Did you go?
I did.
You're required by law, you know, Title 18.
Yep, you're
It's
right.
important. You just heard your finance director explain that we send nearly $1 million a year to the county budget, out of our budget. And if you looked at your tax bill that we got, what was it, 2 weeks ago? 14.4% of our budget goes to the county. The only input you have to county spending is to have a representative. And I was, many years ago, given that chore, and it was very interesting. I learned a lot. I didn't accomplish very much, but I learned a lot. The county operates pretty much in a vacuum. The county commissioners meet at 10 o'clock in the morning when nobody can attend, and they're free will spenders on their own. And I wish you would pay more attention.
Well, your
Have you heard from
opinion,
Bayville about your job?
your opinion is duly noted
About Bayville?
about Bayville.
Yeah, the board, you know you're on the board of governors of the Bayville Corporation?
So,
Huh?
actually, I did not.
It's ex officio, the chairman of the board of selectmen of the town of Boothbay Harbor is a member of that board. It meets once a year. We have had difficulty, not recently, but over the years with the tax situation and so on. It's just something to keep in mind that you got a lot of responsibilities. And I sympathize with you. I know how it is.
It's hard to get to all the meetings sometimes.
How many
So-
people have been to Wharves and Weirs hearing, but we won't talk about
What?
that.
Some of us have been to a lot.
Oh,
Some
some
of
have
us,
been.
some of us have to leave our Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 paying jobs to get to those
Oh, I
meetings
understand
early,
that.
so.
I understand
yeah.
that. It's a nuisance.
No, I didn't say it was a nuisance. I just said some of us had to leave our other jobs, so. And we're fortunate that our other employers allow us to do so. So, and thankful to them too,
I can understand why people don't want to get involved
right?
in civic activity, and, because I have a lot of time.
So, yes, and we do appreciate all the work that
Yes.
you've done on the
Thank you. No,
budget
I know
work.
you. I know you.
So-
I know.
Good. Well, let us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Palmer.
coming tonight.
I got a quick one.
Just a minute, I was just gonna ask does anybody else in the public have any they want to bring up tonight? Nope, okay. Mr. Blakesley, are we gonna see you at the next meeting?
Yes. you are.
Okay, fantastic, I just wanted to check on that.
Right, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, Mike.
A very quick one. Thank you for bringing up the Budget Advisory Committee meeting. Ham Reserve sent me an invitation. I did show up, was proudly
You'll notice that
representing.
I'm in the Mr. Tomko seat out here
Oh,
now.
yes. I did show up, and they had enough people that renewed from last year, so I feel good about the group that's going to be in front of the county commissioners. This is a note about broadband. I know we've talked about the importance of understanding broadband, and the Lynn County Regional Planning Commission, together with the Wiscasset Area Chamber of Commerce, is doing a business after-hours meeting this coming, where did it go? Thursday, September 15th, from 5:30 to 7:30 at the LCRCP offices, right across the street from Big Al's. Burgess Technology is a co-host. They're going to be talking about broadband, about access, the basic nuts and bolts. So it's a great place to learn more about broadband. The Regional Planning Commission is also hosting a larger broadband conference that's going to be on October 25th. And I've sent an initial save the date info to the selectmen, but I'll bring it up when we get closer. Again, I know at the JEDC level, we've been talking about the importance of broadband and access, and so this is going to be an opportunity, a couple opportunities to learn more about what it actually means and how we can use the same correct language about broadband.
And I think that's great. Are there, what I'd be curious to find out, is there something else that the town should be doing when it comes to broadband, or could be doing, or anything relative to it?
Those are great questions, and I'm going to ask them when I show up on Thursday.
Okay.
So, terrific. And the other thing, I'd like to thank Greg and Janet and Palmer and everybody else for showing up and bringing your comments. It's one of the things that moved me out of the audience and motivated me to try and be a selectman. So, thanks guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
One humorous thing I noticed from one meeting you had, it was about the lawns, the yard sale. I watched it on TV, and nobody mentioned the fact that the particular circumstance you were talking about at Townsend Avenue, there's no yard.
All in the eye of the beholder. Palmer. Yeah,
Gotta have grass to have a yard.
yeah. There you go.
Definition.
Okay, so thank you for sharing in our public forum tonight. I think we'll move on for the warrants. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the
So
warrants
moved.
upon review? And
Yep.
second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
There we go.
Okay, great. Do we want to have an executive session tonight, or do we want to postpone that since Tricia's not here? I know for one,
Postpone it.
I need to leave by 9 o'clock tonight.
Postpone it.
Postpone it?
It's hot in here.
Postpone.
Yeah, okay, great. Is that good for postponing?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay,
Then I'll move, or I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
In a second?
I'll second.
Okay, that's not debatable. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.